It's officially budget season with the governor's spending plan announced. We're getting a clear picture on how she's spending money on her priorities. Hear from a budget expert on the biggest items. Hello, welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. Governor Hochul sharing her executive budget, giving us a better idea on how she'd like to pay for the proposals she laid out in her State of the State address a week ago.
$47 million proposed for a free community college. This would be for students ages 25 to 55 pursuing associate's degrees in certain fields like nursing, teaching, technology, and engineering. The proposed $252 billion spending plan, nearly $9 billion more than the current state budget, $19 billion more than what she proposed last year.
Now, this is a balanced budget. There's no income tax increases, and we have record reserves. So I have to factor all that into whether or not we're going to be able to increase spending.
Public safety, also a top priority. She wants $8 million to strengthen state police at the northern border and $77 million to partner with New York City to increase police presence on the subway platforms. On affordability, which includes inflation rebate checks, a tax cut for the middle class, and universal free school meals. A total cost for all three is more than $4 billion.
Republican Minority Leader Rob Ortt sounding off on this executive budget, explaining that he believes the state is not doing enough to address affordability.
We keep talking about affordability as if we can spend enough public money, if we can spend enough tax dollars. Maybe there's a point where we get to, maybe it's $250 billion, maybe it's $300 billion, but surely there's a number we can spend enough to, and everyone in New York, it'll be more affordable to live. That is so ridiculous. Everyone gets that except for the governor.
Joining us now to give additional insight on the executive budget proposal is Patrick Orecki. He's the Director of State Studies at Citizens Budget Commission. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So what were your initial thoughts of the proposed budget?
Yeah, I think this is a budget that had a lot of kind of flashy things that average New Yorkers probably could latch onto. Things like a proposed rebate check for inflation, a middle class tax cut, an expansion of the child tax credit. So things that are really kind of directly related to New Yorkers' bottom lines. It didn't have a lot of the things that we would expect on sort of the wonkier side. There wasn't a lot in terms of a savings plan for the Medicaid program or a way to fund the MTA's capital program to fix subways. So some of those things that we thought might be there just weren't.
Yeah, I was curious because you made a point of saying taxes are not going up, and we're doing really well financially. We've got extra revenue coming in, and that's the impression I got. For the Republican side, they're saying, well, if you got extra money, give it all back to us. Give us a big tax break. We're not going to see that, though, in this budget.
Yeah, and it's sort of a matter of two different time frames being in play here, where right now there's a ton of cash. There just is. From COVID, there was no shortfall as we expected there to be. Stock market kept going up. There was no recession in 2023 like people thought there would be. So there's just a glut right now. Over a longer term, though, the state's financial plan is much rockier. There are big budget gaps there and a lot of resources going away over time.
And there's been some criticism about this budget being just so large. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's really a continuation of a story of really extraordinarily high growth over the last few years. So if you just go back to 10 years ago, the budget was $100 billion smaller 10 years ago. It's now at $252 billion all in. So it is a huge, expansive plan, and it's a rapidly growing one, too.
Is there concern they're extending themselves to the state in terms of this kind of spending where, as you say, you have started having a down year, and then are you looking at layoffs? Are you looking at having to cut programs because you got yourself out on this limb and now you got to get back off it?
Yeah, that's exactly how to think about it, is both how are we under the status quo and what if things got worse or just not as good as they are right now. And right now under the status quo, we're concerned that there are big gaps in the next few years that the state will have to close, and it's going to be very hard to do that under any circumstances. But if the economy, doesn't grow as quickly as we think it will, if there are cuts from Washington, they could have a real significant material impact on the state's bottom line.
And this is just a proposal, so this isn't even the final number. And the one House budgets still have to come out in the Senate and the Assembly. Do you expect that number to be bigger than what it is now?
Yeah, if past this prologue, then yes, it's the pretty typical dance with the budget that the governor is a bit more conservative, still a very expansive plan, but the legislature has even more ideas on how to spend money, and they end up coming out somewhere in the middle. So if we follow that sort of typical pattern, the budget will probably be even bigger when it's enacted.
For those who've never watched the sausage get made, as they say, what happens in there? They get in these committees and private meetings and say, I can get 12 people on board with this, but they all want money for that. They want the new park, the new rail line, the new whatever.
Yeah. So they're really sort of in the information sharing stage right now, where the legislature is just digesting all the ins and outs of the governor's proposal, figuring out what their counteroffer is going to be, and they'll make that proposal at the beginning of March. So it's really that last few weeks, with the deadline being March 31st, where you get the real negotiations happening in a very short amount of time.
And how much is too much? I mean, you hear Republicans saying that our New York state budget is bigger than the budgets of Texas and Florida. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's those type of relative comparisons, but New York and New Yorkers choose to fund the schools at a very high level. We choose to have a very big eligibility program in Medicaid. The question is whether that's sustainable over time. And I think New York also should put a much, much greater emphasis on saying, well, we're hitting high scores in spending, 100%. We outspend everybody in just about every major part of the budget, but are we getting the results that that type of investment should be yielding? And in a lot of cases, it's no, but it's very difficult to change.
You also, you bring up, I was talking earlier about people say, oh, it's too big, we want to cut. People don't understand, do they, how big chunks of this money are sort of already committed before you've even come up with a budget, that almost like they're mandated. Like, we got to spend this much, at least a certain level on education or on Medicaid. These things, they're earmarked for those things, and it's a large part of the budget.
Yeah, really the drivers of the budget are three things. It's the Medicaid program, which if you don't change anything, medical costs go really quickly. School aid, somewhere that New York state lawmakers love to invest more, grows more than inflation. And the state workforce is the third thing, which costs are generally growing in as well. So when all those things are just under status quo, moving in a higher direction, it's going to be tough to manage the overall budget. And again, that's why it was kind of surprising not to see big savings initiatives in something like Medicaid, because those costs are growing so quickly that over time it's going to just be a tremendous challenge to manage.
So the state budget isn't due until April 1st. What else do you expect we could see from now until then?
I think we'll see a lot more about those big issues that people are focused on, especially with the 2024 elections behind us. So affordability, crime, which you don't think about as a typical budget thing, but every policy issue ends up getting jammed into the state budget too. And I think we'll see the legislature come back with more probably revenue-raising proposals. And the big elephant in the room that matters a lot for the state's competitiveness and economic performance is the MTA. There's a big gap to fill in their capital projects funding, and I think that'll eat up a lot of the air over the next 3 months too.
A gap that congestion pricing at $9 is not going to completely fill, right?
That's part of their equation from their last capital plan, but we're actually into their next capital program. So funding that is probably going to require another revenue source, either just baseline from the state or a new tax or some other fee.
All right. Patrick Orecki, thanks for coming in and talking to us about this.
Thanks.
I'm sure we'll have you back, as Jamie said, the bills start coming in and we see where we land with this whole thing.
Yeah.
Probably going up. Governor Hochul proposing funding that would help keep cell phones out of the classroom. When we come back, break down the ban and hear from the Parks Department on the additional steps the state is trying to take, getting these kids unplugged, away from the devices, out in fresh air. Also, if you have a comment or story idea, tell us about it. Email us at news@news10.com. We're also on X at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. Governor Hochul continuing to push to promote distraction-free learning environments this week.
The governor proposing a policy to ban cell phones in classrooms across the state.
Now, as part of the executive budget, the governor setting aside $13 million for schools to invest in cell phone pouches or those cubbies to collect student phones for the duration of the day.
Governor Hochul addressed the concerns of some parents about access to phones in an emergency, saying cell phones can be a distraction during an emergency situation.
If there is a crisis, the horrific shootings, that the last thing you want your child to be doing is looking for their cell phone to live stream it or talk to their friends or communicate with mom and dad, and they might be putting out wrong information or something that could lead someone with a gun to them. That is the danger that's involved. And when parents hear that, they say, oh, I get it.
Governor Bernardo explained it will be up to each individual school district to decide how they want to implement the new policy. Joining us now to give additional insight on the steps the state is taking to encourage kids to unplug and get outside and play, Randy Simons. He's the commissioner for the State Office of Parks, Rec, and Historic Preservation. Randy, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me. It's an important discussion to have and appreciate the interest.
Let's talk about this. There really is a need, isn't there? At least most kids have they got the phones and their heads are down.
You said it perfectly, right? And this is Unplug and Play is really it's a multi-pronged initiative, right? We're really targeting investment in our communities to really target recreational opportunities, but it's much deeper than that, right? It's parks are mental wellness, it's physical wellness, and under the governor's Unplug and Play, it's addressing swim infrastructure, grants to municipalities. Last year we did $150 million. We got money out the door in under 3 months. This year we're going back out with another $50 million, and this year we're up in the game. We're targeting playgrounds in $68 million to municipalities to target playgrounds, building new ones, repairing, refurbishing. And in the New York bricks, right? Building recreational infrastructures for communities, kids and seniors, and it's really a target on community centers and building new and improving the ones that exist today.
And I know you mentioned New York Swims, and that was an initiative in the last state budget. How does this really build off of it?
Last year was such a success. When we launched New York Swims for the first time under the governor, we have real data now that showed the impact that had. One of the things last year is, governor calls me up and says, I want to waive all pool fees at all state parks pools, and we did that. And you're thinking $1 here, $2 there, and we saw a 36% increase in attendance. 542,000 came out to enjoy a state park pool last year. Our Learn to Swim program, we tripled the amount of facilities to teach children, K through 12, how to swim. And we, 400 kids typically is what we teach in a year. And last year, under the tripling, under the governor's New York Swims program, we taught 2,000 kids to swim. And we saw the data. We saw the real impact it had on our communities. And we said we have to bring it back for another round. And this year, we're including in the grant program, not-for-profits. Last year was grants to municipalities. They're still eligible, but we're expanding it to not-for-profits who want to partner with a municipality or an organization to improve swim infrastructure.
What's interesting, Randy, with parks is I see us, the state running commercials for tourism, and I'm like, where's that waterfall? Wait, where's that? And I see it, and then you have to go rewind and you see park. We've got some amazing parks in New York State, don't we?
It is truly amazing. Not only the diverse landscape that New York has, it really is amazing. You could, from Long Island to Niagara to the Thousand Islands, you're hard pressed sometimes to realize this is still New York State. Yeah. And each geographical region is really unique in many cases. And that's what makes our park system as diverse as our communities are. Diverse is the experience and the landscape of our parks, and every turn of the corner. State parks are personal to people, right? For me, growing up, it was going to the beach, having a barbecue, playing in the athletic field, softball with my parents. But we have hot air balloon rides, whitewater rafting. We've got the big air show down at Jones Beach. Niagara Falls is an experience in and of itself, and it's all within a day's drive for many of these places, and maybe it's a long weekend to tour. It's only 4 or 5 hours to get to the extreme corner of the state, and we have more than 250 properties, and we are marinas, we are boating, we are golf. It runs the gamut. Trails. It could take all day promoting the park system, but it really is diverse in many cases.
It's incredible. And then talk about New York bricks.
Yeah.
What exactly is that for someone that may not know?
It's an emphasis on our community centers. It's funny. In a digital world, right? We are more connected than ever, but yet we are more disconnected than ever. And community centers are places for community engagement. Under the governor's program, right? She's saying, let's get out there, let's connect and reconnect with each other. John, you said it, right? We spend a lot of our time, on our devices, right? They make our lives easier, they manage our lives, but now we have to wake up and say, we have to program sort of the connections with each other true connections, right? Sitting here face to face talking and experiencing that. Because when we're online, it can be harmful. If it's not monitored, if it's not balanced, I'll take my Parks hat off for a second, put my dad hat on as a father of a 7 and 10-year-old. I find that, if I'm on a device too long, I find my own mental state in sort of it's a wonky experience, coming out of that, versus if I take the morning and I go out for a walk or a hike with the kids, I'm in a much different state. So that's what the governor says. Community centers, let's all gather, let's be face to face, let's have that true interaction with each other.
Yeah, I was going to say, to your point there, a lot of the iPhones, once in a while you'll get a little thing pop up, say, here's your weekly report of how much you were online. I remember looking at it going, I was not on social media 17 hours. You're insane. And then I start thinking about it going, well, 7 days a week, was I on 2 hours a day? Some in the morning, and you realize I got to put this thing down.
It's depressing to see that number, and that was the first reality check for myself. With that father hat on, I think there was one week, I saw 10 hours, and I was like, 10 hours. I mean, that's an entire work day, and then I thought, 10 hours. If I'm on the phone, where was I not? Right? Was I not present, with the kids that day? Was I not present, with work? Like 10 hours. And it's funny because when you're on the phone too, we think we're navigating our own experience, and we're really not, right? There are algorithms that say we start off with the journey, and we find ourselves, what is it called, going down the rabbit hole, and it's, and we think we're guiding ourselves, and we're not, and we have our kids, right? We have our kids being pushed, through these, and there's harmful algorithms out there, and being online, if it's not balanced, if it's not monitored, it's harmful on our mental state. And like to your point, when I saw that number for me,
yeah,
I got depressed. My mental state went down, and that's what parks are. That's what getting offline, getting outside, under the governor's other initiative is, to get out there. And I find I am in a different physical and mental state when I'm out and about than on the device.
Yeah, and fresh air's free.
Fresh air's free.
Randy, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it.
It's an important conversation. Thank you. And there's more to come. And parks really can elevate to the main stage of not just recreation, but mental and physical wellness in aiding our communities. And I appreciate the discussion today.
We'll have you back for that. All
Absolutely.
Right, thanks, Randy. A border security crackdown. When we come back, a proposed investment to strengthen the northern border. We're going to hear from lawmakers who say there's just something the measure is leaving out. Welcome back. The focus turning this week to New York's northern border.
Law enforcement officers from across the Northeast coming out in full force to honor Vermont Border Patrol agent who was killed in the line of duty earlier this week.
The officers escorted the hearse carrying the agent David Milan to a Burlington area funeral home. The 44-year-old shot and killed during a traffic stop up near the Canadian border on Monday afternoon.
One of the suspects, a German national with current U.S. visa, was also killed. Another suspect is recovering from injuries in the hospital. Their names have not been released.
This is all happening as the governor is looking to increase security at the northern border following an uptick in fentanyl and illegal weapons coming in from Canada. In an executive budget, he proposed $8 million that would bring more state troopers to protect the northern side.
One lawmaker who represents the North Country says while he's encouraged the governor is targeting the northern border, more needs to be done.
I'm sure that $8 million is a lot of money to get this done, but I'm frustrated that the more intelligent way to go about this is to repeal the green light law so that all the teammates can talk to each other.
Now, that green light law the senator mentioned allows undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. Steck and some other lawmakers say it should be repealed or at least amended for counties that are right along the northern border.
The governor not the only one taking interest in border security.
Yeah, the county executive in Rensselaer County in the Capital Region is making immigration policy a key part of his re-election bid.
Rensselaer County Executive Steve McLaughlin touting that Rensselaer is the only county in all of the state with an official agreement to assist ICE. A local law allows state and local law enforcement to collaborate with feds to enforce federal immigration laws.
We have arrested someone and they are already in our jail and they are here illegally. They're getting run through a federal database to make sure that they are not wanted by ICE. and make sure they're not MS-13.
We're going to do whatever we can to get the criminal, illegal immigrants in this country out of our county and all throughout New York State.
We will continue to follow the immigration situation in the state as President Trump has promised to deport significant numbers of illegal immigrants. Stick around, back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
And finally, on Empire State Weekly, one of the big items from last year was the continuing rollout of the legal cannabis industry here in New York State.
Last year, the state seeing $1 billion in cannabis sales. The state currently has 275 legal stores. In the new year, more are expected to open, which will expand consumer access as well as generate more retail sales.
The Office of Cannabis Management telling us that they will continue to crack down on the unregulated market after they had to padlock over 1,500 illegal stores last year.
Next week, OCM will hold their first meeting of the year. We'll be sure to bring you updates on their plans for the new year.
For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you here next week.
And don't you forget, you can watch this show, Empire State Weekly, all over the state. Here's the full schedule of the show on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.